Here we go. Right. Okay. My gosh, guys, sorry, you probably saw a bit of a bemused expression on my face. The reason being, well, first of all, before I get into all of that, welcome to this Thursday's Successfully Social with Sean Mahon, the inimitable Sandra Watson, and the amazing Marcus G. All of which you can stop smiling like that now, Marcus. We're actually live. Oh dear! I'll tell you guys. God! It's all happening in the. It's all happening in the green room. And now I've lost my image. I'm still there, am I?
Yes, you are. You're here.
Because I can just see my avatar. It's all going amazingly at the moment. Somebody's trigger happy with the camera. But welcome to this Thursday Successfully Social with Sean Mahon. Real pleasure to be here and have the amazing guest Marcus G with us. Otherwise known or otherwise demonstrating. Who's doing the camera? It's killing me at the moment. Right, I'm going. You can take over, Sandra. I've lost the plot big time.
I had to get. I mean, Marcus is pouring his coffee or his tea, whatever, and you have an avatar, and here we are trying to be serious. It's just not possible.
No, it's certainly not possible at all. But
I stopped.
You stopped. Oh, phew. Right, guys, I'm going to try that again. So welcome to Thursday Successfully Social. Great privilege of having the amazing Marcus G with us today. So very, very big welcome to yourself, Marcus. And, of course, joined by the inimitable camera-happy, trigger-happy Sandra Watson, which is absolutely wonderful. I just want to ask you how your day has gone, sir. How are you, Marcus? Because over in LA, I don't know what time it is. What time is it with you at the moment?
It's 2 minutes after noon.
2 minutes after noon, and we had the great pleasure of watching you eat your oatmeal just now, which was an experience to behold. So, Marcus, how are you, sir? How are you, sir?
I'm good. I've had the pleasure of your amazing company this morning. I enjoyed my morning ritual of my oatmeal. And yeah, I'm a bit rested, which is nice. I've had a very busy week, very productive week, which is good.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I'm just happy to be here and speak to you both.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that, Marcus. And for those of you that have seen the trailer, Marcus is referred to as the Markable Magick. Marc coming from obviously his name Marcus, but all magic really demonstrating, and I'll let Marcus expand on this in a second, but really just as a reflection of all the different things that Marcus does. And the different skill sets that he's got, which is so wide and varied, literally. I said I wouldn't steal your thunder, but I can't resist doing this. I'm so sorry. Literally from ghost writing at one end to video production to acting, with social media management in there, client management. And I'll tell you now, guys, do pick Marcus's brains via the comment tracker, because the guy is just so bright. Also got a marketing degree, I have to say, so I always learn something from Marcus. So Marcus, tell us where you're at now, a man that does so many different things. What's floating your boat at the moment, Marcus?
What's floating my boat? Well, I'm in a really great place. I have a lot going on right now, and I'm doing a lot of work for my clients. I would kind of like to elaborate on what exactly the Markable Magick is. I feel like that might help people.
Please do, because I didn't put that very well, did I? So yeah. if you would, Marcus, I got so carried away with a rambling introduction, I forgot to explain it. So yeah, tell us about the Markable Magick, Marcus.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Well, it became this thing where at one point I was stage managing for theater. I was working in catering, and I had started ghostwriting and managing social media accounts, and I was acting, and I was dog sitting on the side. So that was really a mouthful when someone would say, "Hey, so what do you do?" And I would say, "Well, I do this, 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 and this." And it didn't, all of it put together, yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It didn't really sound exciting, I guess. And I felt kind of like a jack of all trades, but I felt more appropriately so a Mark of all magic. And so I coined that term for myself to just sum up. And then if someone's interested, like yourself, to ask what does that mean? Then I can elaborate and tell you. But basically, it's doing a lot of things. It's multitasking and being exceptional in everything that I do. That's my commitment to myself, is being exceptional. My big focuses right now are on my acting and on my clients, and specifically what I do for them is I am them online. I am their social media personality profile manager. I ghostwrite all of their posts and manage all of their engagements and interactions with their fans, followers, clients, customers. Yeah, it's a really fun job, and I feel it plays to my acting, because it really is. Acting is two different people, or three different people, or however many people I'm engaging with, or as at that moment. So that's what's going on with me right now.
Well, Marcus, actually, I'm not even sure you've done yourself justice there, because we were laughing away in the green room beforehand. But one thing I really need to pick up on, in fact, anyone who's watching my image in the film strip below would have seen I was sort of transfixed, because I know, Marcus, that there's always this dichotomy, isn't there? When somebody does a lot of different things, one of the things that may be leveled against them is, well, you're doing so many different things. Can you possibly be excellent in all of them? But Marcus, you're really committed to excellence, aren't you, across the different range of what you do? So can you just share how the heck you do that? Because that must take an extraordinary amount of time.
I feel like it's part of my personality to be that way, and this goes back, I guess one of the things that drove me early on, when I was in high school, I was in the top percentile of my class. I was number 3, and I was a drum major, I was a band officer, I was a student council officer, and I was editor for my newspaper. And my newspaper, our journalism supervisor, said to me, "This is going to be impossible for you going into my senior year." There's
oh no, Sandra.
Oh dear, Sean.
Well, guys, you know what? Marcus is also a time traveller, so he's probably zoomed forward in time to another era, just to re-record part of the interview. So don't worry about it. Normal service will resume as possible. Now, I'm not gonna share my school record, my academic record. It wasn't too bad, but it wasn't. I wasn't necessarily in the top percentile either. Although I redeemed myself later, I have to say. Sandra, what about you? I bet you were a bit of a young genius, were you not?
Oh my gosh. I don't know that I was a young genius. I was one of those that did so many different things that, school was very, very important to me. But there was just so many things I was doing within the family, without the family, blah, blah, blah. And I actually went through high school in 3 years here in the United States. I skipped a year. I skipped my junior year, which actually, I guess that might be a little superhuman, because a lot of people don't do that. However, it's just because I wanted to get out of school and get on with my life.
Yeah.
And I loved school, and I was very serious. I never was social in school. So it's really funny that I'm on social media.
Well, actually, Joe, I'm going to let a little secret out the bag, something that you and I discussed a little earlier, because, Sandra, there's a lot about what you've achieved and what you've done. You're going to hate me for saying this online now, but I'm going to warn everybody now that this is going to happen. There's a lot that you've done which reflects you sort of fast-tracking some of the school years and academic experience, which I think is definitely worth sharing. So I'm going to ask you publicly, would you agree to be interviewed by me on Successfully Social?
Yes, I'd love to.
Oh, Sandra, I love you for that. That's absolutely super.
I could never. There's very little I could tell you no, because I have such admiration and respect for you, Sean.
Thank you. And this is turning into a mutual respect fest, guys. So that's cool. So Marcus has disappeared altogether. So I think he's probably been listening, thinking he's probably been contributing, guys. Oh, here.
Are we back?
We're back. Marcus.
And we're back.
Could you hear us, Marcus, or were you just talking?
I think the answer is He's disappeared. Guys, I just need to explain. Marcus obviously would normally be using a laptop, and obviously we'd have a very different experience. But bless him, he's what he's done is he's using his iPad, and I guess we can talk about innovation in that particular regard. And he's back. He's back. So Marcus. We know that you've been time traveling. You've hopped forward into the future to re-edit the video, and that's why you appear to be frozen to us mere mortals. But we were talking about the remarkable magic and how this kind of summarised your different skills, and obviously you're in the top percentile in terms of your academic experiences. And then you had some tutors who were saying to you that. You know what, Marcus, maybe this is going to determine your particular focus in terms of your academic focus. So were they right or were they wrong, Marcus? Where were are you proving them wrong now in terms of what you're doing, would you say?
Well, I did prove her wrong, and I've always felt very good about that because she put that in my letter of recommendation for college. Because she told me at the beginning of my senior year that there was no way I could do all of these different things. There's no way that I would be able to maintain my grades and be an editor and an officer and do all of these and be engaged in all these different organizations. And I just felt like, watch me. And at the end of the year, when she wrote my recommendation for college, she started off with, he's the drum major in the band, he's the editor for the newspaper, he's the officer in student council, and he's number 3 in his class. And so she summed up in her lead for my letter of recommendation everything that I did and noted how I did it with excellence. So I feel like that's just part of my personality. I definitely love to stay busy. I'm driven by ambition and caffeine. So
me too.
it's just, yeah, I would much rather be busy than bored. And I love finding projects that I can offer something to. And I feel like in terms of social media or when I'm stage managing a show, I can contribute I look at it from the place of what can I contribute? Is it my attention to detail? Is it my personality? What is it that I can contribute? And then I don't see the point of participating if I'm not going to give my all. So I feel like it's a standard that I hold myself to.
See, I really love that about you and what you say, Marcus. And I know, like everybody else that I've had the great pleasure of interviewing, and it is a bit of the American dream as well, isn't it? And this is me saying this as an outsider from the UK, but it's all about attitude, isn't it? I think this is what you're saying, and linking that back to all the different things you do. What I'm drawing from this, Marcus, is it's not that you go into anything and say, okay, I'm going to sort of do 6 or 7 things, and I'll do them okay, but they'll be a little watered down. You're going into each thing you do with passion and drive, and what you're saying is that's part of your personality. But I guess it's also part of your values, Marcus, as well. Would that be fair?
I feel it's fair to say. I know I've had the experience of working with people who were on different vibrational wavelengths, and that always feels a bit dissonant. But I had a friend of mine when I lived in Austin had a quote at the bottom of her email, and it always struck me because it said, "The extra mile is a lonely place."
Yeah.
And so, and I've kind of always reflected on that because I feel that can be definitely true. Not always, but sometimes that is very true. And just kind of having a peace with that and knowing that not everyone is going to expect that of themselves, but you know that if you sign me onto your project, you're going to get all of me at all costs.
So in a minute, I'm going to invite Sandra in a second, but in a minute we're going to explore some of the specifics of what you're doing. So we've talked about the big picture. Marcus, I'd really love it if we can get down into some of the details, some of the things that you're really excited about at the moment. But Sandra, as you listen to what Marcus is saying, what sort of things are occurring to you?
Well, I totally agree with what you said, Marcus, about if you take that one road, it could be a very lonely road. The one thing that I have experienced in life, and I think a lot of people that have aspired to doing things the best and different, have found that it is very lonely because the masses is where it's not as lonely, and that's where everybody's doing things the same.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
And so when you're choosing to do things differently or to excel at something, then you find that many times people don't relate to you. And therefore, you have to be willing to be lonely at times, or to be, forget the word lonely, to be alone and know yourself and be comfortable with that.
So it's less about being popular. Excellence
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean you craving popularity. In fact, sometimes you should be bold enough to go the other way. Excellence is having that capacity, Sandra, isn't it, to stand outside the crowd sometimes and take a different view. Marcus, I'm guessing that's your view as well, isn't it? Well, would you agree with that?
I would definitely. I feel like it's a wonderful point, Sandra. And I would, to just piggyback on that, I would say that it's being your best company. And many times I feel like I'm my best company. I crack myself up. I mean, I was up last night until a little after 3 doing work for a client. But I keep myself very well entertained. I think I'm hilarious when I'm by myself. So,
well, I think it's wonderful that you've learned that young in life, because a lot of people have to go through experienced, sometimes drastic experiences to be okay with themselves, to be alone, and to know who they are. Because as youngsters, we grow up with that social desire to be part of the gang, if you will, part of the group, and not learning younger to be okay with ourselves and to enjoy ourselves. Like you say, crack up. I mean, I'll laugh at myself all the time.
Yeah,
because sometimes nobody else is going to.
Well, at least I'm not alone then. I thought I was verging on the requirement for medication, but it seems that we all laugh at ourselves, which is a good thing. So Marcus, let's at the risk of just parking some of that, tell us about some of the projects in a bit more detail. What, in any order you choose, because you do so much, don't you? So what at the moment is you actually focusing on, and what's that doing for you, and how's that affecting the people around you?
Well, at the moment, I am focused on my acting, and so I'm in an acting class that I love. I'm having a great experience there, growing every week. But to contribute to that career and to keep that going, a lot of my time is spent with my clients, focusing on their needs. And so part of what that is weekly, daily interactions, finding out what it is they want to post, what they want to share, and then making that part of my schedule so that their posts are consistently going out, and so that the reception of whatever of their message is always consistent. So I'm a huge advocate of schedulers like Hootsuite to use to my advantage to help me in my craft, because there are times if I'm working a different job, if I'm doing a catering gig, and I don't have access to my phone or to my iPad all day, then I need to be able to plan ahead for that, so that if I'm staying up until 4 a.m., obviously no one's reading tweets at 4 a.m. in the US anyways, I already have those scheduled so that all of their needs are being met. With one of my clients, we meet weekly, and we do, like you mentioned earlier, video production. So whatever it is that he wants to share in his craft and what he does, I video that and record him, and then we work together on putting those posts together and contributing that to his message and his business.
Marcus, do you mind if I just throw in something here, just in case, because I know we had that sort of early. Actually, let me rephrase what I was going to say. In terms of just defining some of what you're talking about here, we talked about the excellence, we talked about the different things you do. We're touching on the social media element, and I think we should explore that a little bit further. We're touching on the video production, but I'm right in thinking that some of this is to, while I don't want to focus overly on the acting just yet, some of this is because that's your ultimate, isn't it? And therefore what you're doing, or am I right? Therefore what you're doing is using this in true American dream style, those different elements to fund the goal of longer term acting. Or are you going to slap me, reach to the screen and say, Sean, you've got it totally wrong?
The former.
Cool. Okay, so you're an advocate. It's interesting, isn't it? A lot of people. Well, two questions here, if you'll forgive me. One was about automation, so that's an interesting one. So you mentioned Hootsuite. So there are fans of automation in social media, and there are people who are equally as critical in terms of arguing that might take away some of the spontaneity of engagement. And I know you've got a view on that. So perhaps you'd share your view. And the other element I'd like you to share is something we were discussing before the start of the show, which is how you keep the authenticity of a client voice when your personality might be markedly different, if you'll excuse the pun of markedly different from the actual personality of the client. So 2 questions there. What do you think, Marcus? What are your views?
Those are great questions. I'll tackle the automation first. I
Cool.
feel it's important to be strategic with the automation, because one of the things that I look for, like when I'm engaging with new followers, is what their feed looks like. And if I see an overly automated feed, that's a turnoff, because I feel, for me, it begs the question: is there a real person behind all of this automation? And I feel like it's important to be consistently putting out and receiving information. So if I see that someone is posting and they're just throwing out information, but they're not engaging, that's a turnoff. And that makes me feel like that there may not be a real person behind that. So it's not likely someone that I'm going to follow back. So using those principles, I apply that to my clients. So I take their message and I make sure that I have those specific tweets or posts scheduled throughout the day at peak times, but then I also make sure that I keep in a blend of regular interactions so that any conversation that they may be participating in stays consistent, and that nurtures those relationships, because ultimately I do feel a big part of what I do, it's marketing and it's social media and it's knowing the nuances of all of these different applications, but it's also at the heart building relationships and nurturing relationships, which is, I feel it's critical in any business to have relationships and nurture those friendships and build upon those, because those are people that eventually you may be able to call on, or they feel that they can call on you, and it helps to grow your network, it helps to grow your brand, it helps to grow your reach. Because one thing I've experienced is that one of my clients has a very niche craft, very niche market craft. But it can be applied to so many different areas if people are enlightened as to how it could be applied to them. I'm trying to speak very ambiguously, so I'm not speaking specifically about him. But it's through building relationships on Twitter, specifically on Twitter. I feel Twitter is definitely my tool of choice. In building relationships, it has enlightened people how what he does can apply to their life. And then those people start to share his message. People that normally wouldn't have, but because we've built relationships, because we talk several times a week, they have an affinity to his brand and to what he does. And they've become advocates of what he does. And it's interesting to hear feedback from people. I mean, I'm acting as him, but to hear people's experiences with what they've seen that he does and how they've been able to apply it to themselves. So I feel, going back to your question in automation, I do feel, to answer that question specifically, it's just being very aware of how you're using it, because if you're using automation as your only way of putting out a message, then I feel like you're shooting yourself in the foot, because it's not what it's about. It's a tool to help you, but it's not to take your hands off of a project. It still requires time to get to know people, to engage, and to stay current. I had someone ask me once about, the question was, how long do you think it would take to schedule quotes to go out 2 or 3 times a day for the rest of the year? And I said, what's your end game?
Exactly.
What is the point of scheduling quotes? And I feel like in watching different Twitter profiles, to my point earlier about, is there a real person behind that? It's a real turnoff, because I feel some people hear okay, I need to have a Facebook account, I need to have a Twitter, I need to be on all of these different platforms. I feel like it's important to pick the platforms that you want to engage on and run with it. And if you don't have the time to run with it, then you hire someone like myself who can dedicate the time to run with it, so that your message and your brand, all of those elements are in place and they're consistent. And it's not something staged like a full automation feed, because who wants to read that? There's nothing entertaining about that or engaging. And I feel all of the major brands have picked up on that. I find it, I love it when I check in on Foursquare at my gym, for instance, or at Starbucks, and then I have the company retweet that I checked in with, or they'll say, you know, enjoy your workout. But it's being aware of, like, how can I stay engaged with my fans, my followers, and potential clients? Like, what more can I be doing to bring to the table and keep the energy going back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much good stuff in there. Just for me, and again, I'll ask Sandra her view in a second. But what stood out for me, two things really, and I totally agree with you. Automation is, you know, it's like any tool. It's neither good nor bad. It's how you use it. That's my personal view. And the view that you've shared with us is the way I would choose to think about automation, where you use it to enhance your reach at a time when otherwise you or the business wouldn't be around, because let's face it, we've got to sleep sometime. But then 70-80% of the actual communication is human and real. So what you're doing is you're creating an awareness with people, and then you engage with them, and never a day goes by without responding to messages. And then the second chunk, which you said, which I really liked, was that when you've got that level of rapport and engagement, because you've earned the right to have it, because you've been so effective, then sometimes your brand extends beyond the realm that was ever imagined. So you were quite rightly, you were very non-specific about that particular client, but clearly that client you're alluding to has a brand, but they're now getting an interest and retweets and reposts from people who you wouldn't normally associate as followers of that brand. That'd be fair, wouldn't it? So we've got the automation, we've got the engagement, we've got that dreaded word authenticity again. Sandra, again, I'd be fascinated by your view. I know you're such a people person. That probably resonates with you. But how much in agreement are you with what Marcus has just said?
I couldn't disagree with him on anything that he said. You know, one of the things that I wanted to know from you, Marcus, is what made you do that in the first place? I mean, look at all of the different things that you've done. Why did you pick out on ghostwriting? And I'm going to bring this up because I know, you know, I wrote a title, Do You Want to Know What a Ghostwriter Is? Because to me, it's totally different than what we're talking about here. When I first thought of ghostwriter, I was thinking of somebody that was writing ghosts for a novelist. And so now I find out we're talking about social media. And so I would like to know your definition, number one, of a ghostwriter. And then number two, why did you determine that this was a good fit for you? Because, I mean, my gosh, look at the things that you've done. They had nothing to do really with being in social media other than you would engage. So I'd like to, I'm sure other people would too. What got you into it and the definition?
Thank you so much. What is it? That's a good question. So ghostwriting, Marcus.
So ghostwriting, my definition of ghostwriting is fully taking on the personality of a brand or client and representing them on their chosen social media platforms. So, and representing them being their voice, being responsible for all of their posts, engagements, everything, and then relating what, in a way, it's kind of like working as a personal assistant, because as I receive engagements, obviously I can't answer every single question, but I can relay all of those back to my client to get the specific information I need to respond to whatever it is. So really, I am whoever hires me, I become their personality online. Does that answer your question, Sandra?
It does, and I think a lot of people then will say, okay, I understand that. You're basically talking about the same thing as a lot of people call a virtual assistant.
Exactly. Yes, I hadn't heard that term before, but yes, a virtual assistant. Okay.
And that will help people understand what we're talking about. So I think that was a good description. And I don't think people really talk about the description even of a virtual assistant. So thank you for people out there. I know that's great to know.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would certainly echo that. I've got to echo it because it was such a clever question, Sandra, and I hadn't thought of it. So in my shuffling embarrassment, that I should have asked that myself.
Well, he has to answer the second part of it then too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you've got to answer the second part. God, I'm so rude. Sorry about that. Marcus, back to you.
I feel like the way that I came into it was really a gift from the universe, because at the time I was stage managing for a show, and the show didn't have really any social media presence. And so I offered, because I was at the time becoming familiar with Twitter, would you like me to start posting about the show? And they said, sure, go for it. And it took me when I started, because I felt like this is kind of fascinating, the way that this information is being shared. And at the time, I really wasn't working consistently aside from stage managing. So I dedicated a lot of my time to sitting at Starbucks and reading about Twitter and how it works and how to maximize my reach. Shortly after, I had a friend reach out to me who wanted to increase her business social media presence. So she made me an offer and said, hey, I'll pay you this much money. Can you do this for me? And I felt like, yeah. So that was my first real ghostwriting experience, aside from doing the show, was taking on her personality and her business and starting her tweets and building engagements. And so I started to see how tweets could build relationships and how I could benefit other people.
Oh, it's back.
We're back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. What did you miss?
No, we didn't miss anything because we had the audio. So you were saying you assumed her personality and things move forward. So yes, Marcus. So we didn't miss anything.
Okay, great. And so then shortly after that, I was stage managing for another show, and they asked me if I would be the voice of the show. And so I started doing that, and the show had a very different personality, which I had a lot of fun with, because that gave me the opportunity to bringing the personality of this show to the Twitter sphere. And so I worked on that, and it kind of really just took on a life of its own, because then I continued working for my friend, and then I had someone else from my past reach out to me and say, hey, I need help with this. Can you help me? And that's where I picked up with one of my clients. And since then, it's been through word of mouth, the work that I've done for people. And they ask, who does your social media? And if my client feels comfortable disclosing, then they share, and then they relate them back to me.
Marcus, a little bit later on, we'll probably throw in a little bit of question, put my teeth in a little bit of a question, I should say, about how people can reach you if they want to on that facet. But just stepping back a little bit, I'm looking at you smiling when you talk about your social media and how it worked, and Sandra's question was a perfect one. And I'm also feeling a bit of a resonance in terms of you talk about assuming somebody's personality. And taking on a role. So that's language that you would associate with acting as well, isn't it? And you've
Definitely
alluded to that previously. Sandra also alluded to that earlier, and we spoke about this in the green room beforehand. So tell me, what in your head, what is the link? Because in a sense, they're both performance, aren't they? If you've got to be a good ghostwriter, you've got to be pretty astute as to what that brand or person's about. And similarly, as an actor, you've got to take on another character. So tell us about that, Marcus.
So specifically,
well, let's put it this way. That was such a good question that nobody understands it. So it must be the accent. So if I translate that into and make it more simple, is there in your mind a similarity between acting and ghostwriting, or are they totally unrelated? And if there is a similarity, what does that look like to you?
Great question. I definitely feel there's a similarity, because my clients, I don't feel that we all have very different personalities, but I know them well enough to feel comfortable stepping into those shoes when I'm writing for them and when I'm engaging on behalf of them. And it's interesting because even when I sit in front of my iPad for hours, keeping engagements current and whatnot, I can hear their voice in my head, and it almost becomes like I know what they would say, and I know how they would respond because I know them, and I know I've even narrowed it down to just in keeping their brand consistent and what people expect from them. I'm specific as to what emoticons I use on and representing them, because I feel like that all becomes something that people come to expect something, and they know if they go there, they know if they go to my client's profile, they kind of know what to expect. And I like to keep that consistent so that the tone is always, it offers consistency to whoever's coming to it, if that makes sense. I feel like I just kind of jumped over my words there.
Well, you know what? I'm glad it's not just me. But so we're talking consistency. Sorry to interrupt. So yeah,
consistency. And then so to your point about it being an actor, yes, because I feel like in being an actor, it is bringing yourself to the stage. I feel to the screen, but it's also being able to kind of step outside of yourself and let the character flow through, or you flow through the character. I mean, I feel like it's different for everyone, but I do feel that there are similarities in the two worlds, and it gives me when I'm working as one of my clients, it gives me that opportunity to step outside of myself and be somebody totally different. Because my clients are very different from me, and so when I start to think like them, it is like thinking like a character, because I know their choices and the things that they would say. And there have been times when I've been posed with questions that when I read it as myself, I'm like, oh, I know how I would answer as me.
Right.
But that's not my job, is to respond as my client. I feel it's having a high integrity. I feel like it's having a high integrity on that end, because it's none of it's ever for my gain. It's for my client's gain. And I feel like crossing that over into the acting realm, it's for the gain of the audience. It's for the audience to be enlightened, educated, and entertained by the performance. So it has nothing to do with that person. It's really stepping outside of yourself and like telling the story of that character, which, going back to social media, I'm telling the story of my clients.
Marcus, that's a great answer, and I love that. And you talk about integrity. It's also about empathy, isn't it? There are two, interestingly, and I'm just you're gonna think I'm shifting gears, but it's kind of bizarrely related to ghostwriting. There's two very spooky things going on at the moment. I wonder if you can spot them. And there's a bit of a cackle coming from my esteemed co-host. So the first thing I noticed, actually, and it isn't related to my co-host, but there's something very weird happening on your ceiling. I don't know if you noticed, and it seems to be shimmering as we talk about ghostwriting. So that's a bit spooky. That's I've got a bit of a palm sweat coming on. Now, the other thing, have you noticed what's happened to Sandra, or not?
The ghost of Sandra Watson.
Yeah, Sandra's. I'm amazed, Sandra. You're so clever, technically, aren't you? You look pretty scary. Pretty scary, Sandra. I have to say.
Well, I just wanted to say I'm taking on the persona, and I'm going to do ghost talking for Marcus.
Well, we're loving this.
One thing, that's an excellent question.
Marcus is thinking, right? Don't come to the audition. Don't come to the audition, Sandra.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist.
No, I love
Marcus.
it.
You know,
I love
it's
it.
like if I were ghostwriting for you, I'd have to have that.
No, I love that so much, Sandra. That is so clever. And do you know what? You've just leading me into something which I hope we're all prepared for. And I'm gonna make sure that I get this right this time. But this is my moment of glory, or not, depending on how it goes. Does everyone remember this? We are just about to go into Smash and Trash, everybody. So it's Smash and Trash. Whoa, 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 whoa. So for those of you that don't, yeah, Marcus, I'm glad you're getting to the spirit of things in more ways than one. Fantastic. So we're just going to shift gears a little bit, but Smash and Trash, for those of you that have not seen the show before, the Smash is very much about what amazing, what wonderful, what great, what amusing, what comical thing has happened in your week. And the Trash is maybe just that little thing that you'd like to bin, throw in the trash that's been a little bit irksome. awesome. And these aren't massively serious. We're not talking global catastrophe or whatever. But I know Marcus is so funny that you're going to have something extraordinary. So I've set you up for this, Marcus. So it better be good, sir. It better be good. So I'm just going to get the smash and trash off. There we go, and put myself back on again. And Marcus, over to you, sir. Smash and trash. Oh, let's do the trash first, Marcus, if we could, so we can end on the smash.
Okay, good. Yeah, I like that idea. Okay, I would say my trash. I actually woke up this morning with a nightmare, and I feel like this speaks to my trash. I just had a nightmare of animal cruelty, and that is definitely my trash. I love animals. Sometimes I feel like I love animals more than I love people, and just the thought of animal cruelty, it really disgusts me.
Me too.
I don't even have words for it. So that is definitely my trash. And my smash is you guys, specifically you, Sean and Sandra. This has been so amazing, and I've looked forward to this all week. And I'm very grateful to you, Sean, for creating this amazing platform for us all to engage. And I think we started tweeting back in December. And so it's just been so amazing how we've built a relationship overseas. And Sandra, I don't know if Sean mentioned this, but Sean and I actually have a friend in common who lives in Australia.
Yeah, and amazingly. I didn't.
Yeah, it just made the world even smaller. So thank you, Sean. Sean Mahon, you are my smash.
Thank you, Marcus. That's extraordinarily generous of you, and I really appreciate that. And reciprocation to everybody. And you know, it is an extraordinary thing, isn't it? That we're sat in different time zones, different continents, and there is a connection. And I'm going to put my little serious face on for a minute, but I'm of that generation that arrived before cell phones. And I still marvel at this, and I still think how wonderful it is that people could connect. And I know it sounds like a public information film, but it is very, very sincere. So likewise, Marcus, definite smash, you guys, both of you, and really appreciate that. Thank you. And Sandra, are you ready and primed to go next, or is it?
Oh yes. You put me in the acting mood. See what happened here?
I love that.
I was explaining before the show that my trash would be literally the trash. At the beginning of every new year, we go through boxes and boxes from businesses, etc., and have to shred everything. So we started doing that yesterday, and it was so exciting. And I have all of these little white things all over my carpet because we're shredding, and literally 3 boxes of things, paper stuff. So you can imagine. And then today, my vacuum went out. It just blew up, and now I have all of these little white things all over the carpet and nothing to pick them up with. So I literally have trash.
So your trash is your trash, literally.
Oh my gosh, yes. Now I'm laughing at trash. That's not a good thing, is it?
No. Oh, it could be. It could be.
Okay, so then my smash thing is, Sean, you and I were talking about it, and you were delightful enough to let me, when I was having my 5-year-old grandson over here at the house, let him talk to you on camera because he'd never seen, video camera or anything. His name's Corbin, and we got to talking about zombies, didn't we?
Zombie movies, yeah.
Yes, zombie movies. And Corbin being 5, you said to him, now you realize, Corbin, zombies are not real. And Corbin stood there and looked at you, and he said, no, you're wrong. They are real. And so for me, the smash was not that they're real, but that a 5-year-old had the gumption and the audacity to end up to an adult over the ocean and everything and say, no, you're wrong. And to stand with their conviction. And so for me, the smash was, I need to remember the conviction of a 5-year-old. That's where we should be. We should be so convicted in everything we do that we don't let somebody else talk us out of it. And boy, you couldn't.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, very, very true, Marcus. And do you know, it's funny actually. I was laughing away with that, but you do make and it is something that's funny. And I've got to say that I've not slept since we had that conversation. I'm looking for zombies in my backyard every single day as a subsequent note to that. But in all fairness, what a great thing, isn't it? That you're so right. Many of these young kids, they haven't learned no. I mean, sometimes that's not a great thing, but in terms of imagination and anything being possible, if only we could keep harnessing that. And I guess that, when we come back to Marcus, that's something that actors do. You keep possibilities in mind and you bring them back. Before I get too carried away with that, I'm going to share my smash and trash. They're not going to be too heavy. In fact, one has really, really fired me up, I have to say. But starting with the trash. You'll all be horrified and surprised and probably amazed that the UK weather isn't always brilliant. And I know it'll come as a huge shock and surprise because obviously everyone believes that this side of the pond we bask in temperatures of 90 to 100 on a regular basis, and we're always seen in our shorts with barbecues. But sadly it's not true. But my trash is I've got to say the trash is the UK weather. So the last week we've had, for us, they're pretty good temperatures. We've had sort of high 80s, touching on the early 90s, which has been fantastic. Very little wind, it's been great. But my trash today, I thought, this is it, I'm going to get my backyard sorted. Went out and the heavens opened. Now, you might think that's not particularly amusing, but I've sprung a leak. So I had to cover the laptop earlier. There seems to be a bit of a problem with a flat roof I've got. So this is a makeshift. I mean, it looks the same as a normal studio, if you like, but it's a little bit damper than it normally is. I've got to say. So a bit of a trash. I'm going to have to get the place sorted a little bit tomorrow. And my smash, guys, my smash. To put it on a more positive note, I absolutely adore my stepson. I'm not with his mom anymore, but Alex has been in my life since '96. He's 28 now. He was 10 when I met him, and he's a triathlete. Triathlete. That would be the word. Having injured himself recently, he's suddenly realised that his capacity after injuries is probably at the level that I can just about do. And I do refer to him in terms of activity quite a lot because I do admire what he does athletically. But I actually matched him today, so he was showing me some quite tough runs and interval training. And that isn't the smash. I felt good about it, and I felt really proud. I was sweating. I've drunk loads of water. But afterwards, he turned to me and said, Sean, I just think you couldn't do it. I just thought you couldn't do it, and I'm really, really impressed. And I kind of felt that glow of, thanks, Alex, and also that slight slap in the face because he'd already earmarked me down at retard level in terms of my athletic qualities. But it was a real smash for me today. So thanks, Alex, if you're watching. Really appreciate that. So all good. So Marcus, we've
Sean,
touched on.
Before you go any further, I really think that we need to address something with Marcus before the end of the show.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're going to ask, and I totally
Okay, well then you go.
No, you ask it, Sandra. I know.
No, I want you to.
Well, I will then. If you want me to, I could never refuse you, Sandra. I could never refuse you. So Marcus, you're looking, let's just say, pretty dapper at the moment. I don't know if you use that word in the States. We use it in the UK, and I'm referring particularly to your tie, which is an absolutely awesome tie. So this would be the question I think you were prompting me there with, Sandra. So tell us about your tie, Marcus.
Well, it's just a basic tie, but I think it's the knot that's a little bit more interesting. And the knot is called a trinity. I don't know if you can see that. And it's just a different way of tying the knot that I found on Facebook. And then I watched a YouTube video on how to do it, and now it's become my knot of choice. It's a subtle difference, but I feel like it offers a little pop to the neck, and it makes the tie a little bit more fun to wear.
So you've got three knots on it, or 2 knots? Or? Oh, Marcus, round of applause. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes, there's 1, 2, and 3. So when you start, the interesting thing about the knot is that when you start out with a normal knot, you'll use the larger end of the tie, but this one is all about using the smaller end of the tie. And so in its first formation, it forms like a slight heart, and then you cross over and under, and then you get this.
Marcus, I think we're so awestruck by that. I'm going to go and get myself. What did you call it? A Trinity knot, was it?
It's the Trinity knot.
Okay.
Do they show on the internet how to tie this?
That's exactly how I learned how to do it. I saw an infographic of how to do it because some of the folds are interesting. I didn't feel like a two-dimensional infographic really did it justice, and so, or it didn't really help me when looking at it. So watching a video and then watching myself in the mirror do it helped me master the craft of the Trinity knot.
So there we go, guys. You heard it here first. That Marcus is not only great in terms of ghostwriting and social media management. It's not only great in terms of refining his acting craft, but he knows how to tie a bloody good tie. So I mean that's absolutely extraordinary. The Trinity knot at that.
Thank you.
Well, Marcus, we've got about 10 minutes left to the show, and I'm conscious of the fact we've not really touched on everything you do. So I'm going to let you choose in the last 10 minutes, if you like. What area would you like to focus on, and what aspect of Marcus G would you like to present to the audience, if you will?
That's a great question. I know there are a lot of things that you and I have talked about in the past, and I know earlier you mentioned me being on my iPad, and so I feel like that kind of speaks to rolling with the punches, because I don't have a computer. And interesting story. So right when I started social media 2 years ago, and I was doing it for the show, my computer had just went completely out. And I lived on my iPhone for almost a year. So when I was submitting for auditions and when I was learning Twitter, I was doing it all from my iPhone. And I would sit at Starbucks for 8 hours and have my tall drip and then my free refills on my Starbucks card. But I'm sitting there focused on this little 4-inch screen for hours on end, but that's what helped me learn. And so from that, and then just me studying social media, I really had an affinity for a mobile platform, and so that's why I made the choice to focus only and operate only from a mobile platform. Mm-hmm. So there's that. So just to your point earlier about being on the iPad, it's just that was part of my a choice that I made because I feel it's kind of where the industry is going, and for me, it just spoke to how I live my life. It's very mobile. It's a representation of my life. I have to be on the go. So there's that. What specific questions do you have? I'd love to answer a question.
Well okay. What about acting?
What about acting?
What made you do that? I mean, you're obviously happy with social media. You enjoy your other things that you're doing, etc. I mean, is that going to be a career choice or a hobby or what?
Acting is definitely where my heart is. That's always been where my heart is. One of my aunts actually has a video of me when I was like 4, and this is when we had huge camcorders, and so she's filming me, but she was feeding it through the television so I could see myself on television, and I was so enthralled with that. I was like, I could see myself on TV every day, and so from my mouth to the ears of the universe. That's something that I've always wanted to do, and I didn't make that choice though until.
It's leaving us in suspense.
Okay, it's going to be a mystery actor. He's going to be in mystery.
Yeah, I you know what, Marcus has done that deliberately. We all think it's a technical malfunction, but he's just keeping us in suspense.
Yeah, that look.
Yeah, that poised, studied look. I mean, guys, bless him. Marcus has got a bit of a problem with his bandwidth. I'm sure he'll join us again, but he is one of the things that I think is really impressive about Marcus, and he's just about to come back, is mindset. And Sandra's just asked him about the acting. His journey is quite an interesting one, and probably best coming from Marcus himself. Marcus, are you there? Still no. He's just coming back in, but clearly, just to make it clear, Marcus excels with a lot of these different things that he's doing, but it's really to fuel the funding for his increasing acting career. And for me personally, this side of the pond, I just think that's brilliant. You know, the guy works really, really hard, but he's got his long-term dream as well. You know, that's a good thing, isn't it? And Sandra, when you built your businesses, you had your dreams as well, didn't you? As did other guests. So, just in case Marcus doesn't come back, what do you think? Do you think the American dream is particularly American, or is everyone capable of that?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with geographic slot or education, if you will. I think that it's something internally that happens with people. And I think that it can change at different times in your life, some of our dreams. I mean, some people don't even realize what their dream is until they have gone through other things in their life, and then all of a sudden that light bulb goes off and says, that's really what I've been searching for.
Sure.
That's where I feel fulfilled. That's what I feel I need to do.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely it is something that's in us, and we don't always discover it right away. And there's the dreamer coming back.
There's the dreamer, Marcus. We were just talking about. I mean, one aspect that I'd love to, and perhaps it's for another time, but maybe you can give us in a nutshell statement. We're talking about the acting, but you know, you've got such an amazing desire to do well. So you talked about how you saw yourself on the screen as a young kid, and you thought, yeah, I want to do that. But you know, it's a real focus of yours, I know, and you're doing all the other stuff really, really well at the moment. But what drives you, Marcus? What really, really drives you in that sense?
I feel like one of the things that I've always appreciated, but I didn't really like embrace, was my passion to entertain.
Right.
And one of the things that I felt was really brilliant that an acting coach of mine has said is that the role of an actor is in a performance, to educate. It's to educate, it's to entertain, and it's to enlighten. Sure. Because everything that an actor does is a reflection of the human condition. And that's so profound to me, to be able to offer that. And I know for me, a lot of times I found growing up, I mean, I had a rocky growing up. It wasn't like a storybook story. But I felt like I found sanctuary in shows and these characters and the relationships, and it gave me like a place to look forward to. So the thought of being able to offer that to the world, to participate in an ensemble that would create, whether it's a comedy or a drama, to create this space and this environment where someone could sit and kind of escape into as a sanctuary, to me, that is just, it's fantastic, and it's a way to inspire people, because it is a reflection of the human condition. And I feel we have some of the most brilliant writers in the world living in LA, and the stories that they put together speak to so many different people from different angles. Because even though what you're watching, it may not be the same thing that's happening to you, but you may relate to it. And I feel like that's where part of why we're here. It's to connect. It's to relate to one another. And that's part of what's so brilliant about social media, is that it's all about connecting, and it's all about relating. And tying it back for a second just to social media, relating to one another, and how can I relate my brand to you, and how can I make you relate to my brand? And I feel like that crosses directly over into acting, because it's these characters that come to life on the screen. And it's obviously, if no one relates to your show, then maybe then that might speak to the lack of success. But if people are relating to it, I feel like that says something very powerful about what's being done, the chemistry between the characters, the writing, like everything. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, again, a couple of things come out for that: the chemistry between the characters, but the learning. And it's funny, last week we had Cara Brookins on the show, and Cara made a similar point in terms of the writing, that when she, as an author, when she steps into the shoes of the characters, and particularly with the book that she's working on now, which is a fictionalized account of some quite challenging times. So she's altered some of the reality that happened and condensed time streams and things like that. But it's all about, creating a piece of work that people can relate to. And maybe it's not directly equivalent to their lives at the moment, but there'll be a resonance at some level. And I'm kind of picking that up from you, Marcus, that in your acting career, that drives you. You've got some brilliant writers in LA, as well as brilliant performers like yourself, which take my hat off to you, and the social media element as well, where you strange parallel. You might think acting and social media, but in a way, there's a performance element there as well. So, did I understand you correctly, Marcus? Is that a reasonable summary of what you said?
Definitely, I felt like that's a perfect summary, a synopsis.
And had you said no, I would have just sort of crumbled into oblivion. Sandra, I'd like to invite you in. You've always got quite insightful questions, so throw in a question to Mr. G here. I'm sure he'd appreciate it.
Well, one of the things I was thinking of when you were talking is that acting really is very similar, when you think about it, to so many things in life. It's not just performing on the stage, but when you have a business, when you're in your business of what you're doing right now, Marcus, we've talked about the analogy to acting and everything, but regardless of what a business is, whatever it is you're doing, we really are creating a stage for that
Indeed.
person to escape and to relate. So when we create that business, we have to keep the client in mind. What is the experience they want to have when they come and watch the stage? And so business really is acting. I mean, I just clearly saw the similarity there, that we're creating a theater for them to come to.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus is better qualified to answer that than me. I suppose the only additional thing I'd throw in there is, when people act, but it's not from the core, and it's perhaps contrary to the interests of the clients and themselves. I think what I like is that ethical approach. So as an actor, Marcus, you've got to be true to the character. When authors write novels, they've got to represent the characters as best as possible. And Sandra, because you've had some awesome business experiences, and we will share that on a future Successfully Social. You were putting yourself out there, Sandra, as a real high quality series of businesses, weren't you, to connect? So I think you are putting us. I think I'm almost losing myself in trying to explore the analogy further, but I think there are so many similarities with business and acting, as you said, but you've got to be. I'm trying to avoid the word authentic, so I'm trying to look for an alternative word, but the connection comes from real and genuine rapport and understanding, doesn't it? Whether it be of a client, of an audience, the text that you're working from as an actor, or whatever it may be. So that's really good.
Marcus, who said it? The world's a stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and just to touch on what Sandra said, because I felt it was really brilliant. From my experience working in the corporate world, I feel like it's about setting the intention of making your business, setting the intention of it being engaging. And what I felt was so brilliant when I worked for Starbucks a few years ago, they have a commitment, and I loved this. Their commitment is to being the third place. So there's the idea that the customer has a home, they have their work, and Starbucks is their third place. And I felt it's a very powerful way. It's a very powerful intention of directly involving and engaging someone, like inviting them into your space. And in acting, it's like inviting them into the audience, into the experience that you're creating.
Well, I tell you, it gives me goosebumps when you talk about it, because I think that it makes things so much more personal when we talk about the business side of it. I mean, you do that all the time. You are making your clients come into that personal space. Even though you're going into theirs, they're coming into yours also. You're merging. And they want to experience that same thing. They want to experience Marcus as them.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus, I also think it has a resonance with what you said earlier about one particular client, where that level of resonance was so profound, and you helped that client, I know, with making that to be the case, that people outside their niche have now started following them because you help them develop a real connection, and I think it's lovely. And I'd not heard that Starbucks story before as well. I love that third place philosophy. Sadly, I'm conscious of the fact we're getting to the end of our time here, and Marc, there's so much more we could explore. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is whether you'd consider coming back on another show at all.
I would love to come back on. This is fantastic.
Cool. Well, I was hoping you'd say that. So that's all good. And I always ask people as we get to the end of the show, just some closing thoughts. So Marcus, if there were one or two core ideas, either that you've shared already or things that you think would be of benefit to our audience today that you'd just like to throw out there, what would they be?
At the sake of sounding a bit trite, I would say just keep going.
Cool.
Like set the intention for whatever it is that you want, and go for it. And I will say, I mean, I've worked in development. I worked in the heliotherapy industry. I worked in computers. I worked in banking. I worked in coffee. I started my own personal organizing business that experienced some success, and then it kind of fell off for a bit. I've gone through periods where I just live on peanut butter and pasta because I didn't have money, but I kept going because I knew what I wanted. And then, like, to Sandra's question earlier about like why social media and how that came to play, that came to me through experiences when I was doing what I loved, and I loved stage managing and it just exhilarated me, and through that came the opportunity for social media, and then I ran with that. So I feel like it's just being aware of opportunities that you are presented with, like really paying attention to things that come your way and how it may benefit you, because I do feel that in everything, and just from my personal experience, everything that I've done, from tanning to banking to coffee to social media, I feel like I can contribute those experiences to my acting, and I can contribute those experiences to my social media, just from different principles and philosophies that each experience offered, like using the Starbucks example as a perfect example. So I would just say keep going, like figure out what it is that you really want to do, and you may not know what way the road will turn, but if you keep going and you love it, and people ask me that because there were jobs that I had in the past that I didn't love, but I do love what I do now, and I feel like that makes all the difference. And I am, like you said earlier, I do my social media to feed this other part of my life that I'm still manifesting, that I'm still creating.
I really love that, Marcus. So really set your intention, keep going, and I love your analogy about the path may not always be clear, but as long as the intention is, that's the main thing. And actually that's very common, unsurprisingly, with what a lot of the other guests have said. And that doesn't surprise me because this is the nature of the show we're doing, the nature of the people that have been on it. Sandra, I'm going to ask you the same sort of thought. So what's your sort of summary and take-home message out of the show today?
I definitely think it goes along with what Marcus was saying, and that is, no matter what it is that we have been doing at any stage in our life, it is the addition to what it is that we really want to be. We may want, like you want to be an actor, but all of these other facets that you've been involved in, many people would look and say, well, they might have been mistakes. You should maybe not have done them. But you can look at them and say, that's not true, because without this, I couldn't bring that to this part of my life. So you knew internally you could be in front of people and be very happy. That's what you said is your passion. So internally you have been seeking that, and all of these things have been coming to you to prepare you for that part in your life.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, Sandra, quite often we're on the same wavelength, and I know that's true with Marcus, and mine's very similar. And I guess when I was younger, sometimes I used to look back on certain experiences, and I kind of enjoyed them at the time, but I couldn't see how they would link to my longer term views. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that no experience is wasted, and wisdom comes from when you're able to integrate those experiences into the direction you're going now. But the confusion in my life, I think, when I was younger, came from the fact that when I wasn't clear of my long-term intention, it was difficult to know how to integrate those experiences. And as I got more clear in terms of my long-term direction, the integration happened naturally. So I kind of think we're all on the same wavelength. So absolutely tremendous that we are. Marcus, I'm sure many people might like to connect with you after the event. So my final question before we close would be, what's your preferred way of people connecting with you, should people want to know more about what you do, or maybe even hire your services in terms of some of the social media management that you spoke about earlier?
Great question. I feel like Twitter is definitely the best way to connect with me, and my handle is the Marcus G.
So Marcus, that would be at the Marcus G, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll post the link in the replay afterwards. So that's excellent. So Marcus, it's been an absolute privilege, real pleasure
Thank you.
to catch up with you over the last hour and a bit. And thanks to the audience for tuning in. Thanks to the amazing Sandra Watson for very incisive questions as always. And from me, Sean Mahon, I just want to wish you all, whether it be morning for you, afternoon for you, or as is the case in the UK, evening for you, have a great day, whatever you're doing, and do tune in to next Successfully Social, which will probably be in a couple of weeks' time. Take care, everybody. Really enjoyed it. Bye for now. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye now.